श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच एभिर्भूतानि भूतात्मा महाभूतैर्महाभुज ससर्जोच्चावचान्याद्यः स्वमात्रात्मप्रसिद्धये 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 श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच एभिर्भूतानि भूतात्मा महाभूतैर्महाभुज ससर्जोच्चावचान्याद्यः स्वमात्रात्मप्रसिद्धये श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच एभिर्भूतानि भूतात्मा महाभूतैर्महाभुज ससर्जोच्चावचान्याद्यः स्वमात्रात्मप्रसिद्धये माताजी श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच एभिर्भूतानि भूतात्मा महाभूतैर्महाभुज ससर्जोच्चावचान्याद्यः स्वमात्रात्मप्रसिद्धये श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच एभिर्भूतानि भूतात्मा महाभूतैर्महाभुज ससर्जोच्चावचान्याद्यः स्वमात्रात्मप्रसिद्धये श्री अंतरिक्ष उवाच श्री अंतरिक्ष said, Ebhihi, by these material elements, Bhutani, creatures, Bhutatma, the soul of all creation, Mahabhutaihi, by the elements of Mahattattva, Mahabhuja, O mighty armed king, Sasarja, he created, Uchcha Avachani, both high and low, Adyaha, the original person, Swa, of his own parts and parcels, Matra, the sense gratification, Atma, and the self-realization. Prasiddhaye, for facilitating. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Shri Antariksha said, O mighty armed king, by activating the material elements, the primeval soul of all creation has sent forth all living beings in higher and lower species, so that these conditioned souls can cultivate either sense gratification or ultimate liberation according to their desire. So first part of the purport was covered in the yesterday's class, and we will begin with the second part. The phrase Swamatratma Prasiddhaye is very significant in this verse. The word Swa indicates possession. All living beings belong to the Supreme Lord. Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhutah Sanatanaha. Therefore, according to this verse, they have two options, Matra Prasiddhaye and Atma Prasiddhaye. Matra refers to the material senses, and Prasiddhaye refers to effective accomplishment. Therefore, Matra Prasiddhaye means efficiently engaging in sense gratification. On the other hand, Atma Prasiddhaye refers to Krishna consciousness. There are two categories of Atma, the Jivatma or the living entity who is dependent, and the Paramatma, the supreme living entity who is independent. Some living entities desire to understand both categories of Atma, and in this verse the word Atma Prasiddhaye indicates that the material world is created to give those living entities the opportunity to achieve such understanding and thus return to the kingdom of God, where life is eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. Srila Sridhara Swami confirms this by quoting a verse from Veda Stuti of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 87 chapter, 2nd verse. Buddhindriya mana pranan jananam asrujat prabhu matrartham cha bhavartham cha atmane akalpanaya cha. The Lord created intelligence, senses, mind and vital air of the living beings for sense gratification, for performing sacrifices to attain higher births, and ultimately for offering sacrifices to the Supreme Soul. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the actual purpose of Lord's creation is only one, to facilitate the advancement of devotional service to the Lord Himself. Although it is stated that the Lord facilitates sense gratification, it should be understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not ultimately condone the foolishness of the conditioned souls. The Lord facilitates sense gratification, Matra Prasiddhaye, so that the living entities will gradually understand the futility of trying to enjoy without Him. Every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. In the Vedic literature, the Lord gives a regulative program so that the living beings can gradually exhaust their tendencies to be foolish and learn the value of surrender unto Him. The Lord is undoubtedly the reservoir of all beauty, bliss and satisfaction, and it is the duty of every living entity to engage in the loving service of the Lord. Although there are apparently two purposes for creation, it should be understood that ultimately the purpose is one. The arrangement for sense gratification is ultimately meant to bring the living entities to the single purpose of going back home, back to Godhead. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Krupatamaham Vande Di Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So, Hare Krishna's mic is fine. Fine. I'd just like to express my gratitude to all the devotees for giving me chance to speak, although I don't at all feel qualified. In fact, when I came in the morning, I saw all the devotees sitting and chanting very intensely. And I know what is the quality of my chanting every day at home. I was just feeling that how can you sit in front of such souls and speak something from Srimad Bhagavatam? See, ultimately it is sadhana that really affects a person. But I'll just do this as a duty, I know. And whatever mistakes I make, please forgive me. So, yesterday Prem Kishore Prabhu gave a fantastic class. He explained the first part of the purport. When I read the entire purport, somehow I felt that the first part of the purport was more difficult to speak on. And then the second part. The second part is relatively easy. It gives you very nice points. But just covering some parts from the earlier purport. You see, actually, right in the first part of today's portion of the purport, the commentators, they make a very nice point. They mention that the living entities, in fact, the yesterday's purport, it ends saying that, the human beings are special because they have a large brain. And then the today's purport begins saying that what is so special for having that large brain is that the human beings have been given options. And it says that two options are given. One is Matra Prasiddhaye and Atma Prasiddhaye. The option of sense gratification and liberation. So this word option is very nice. Those of you who have been in the financial markets, there is something called as futures and options. You heard of this? It's called F&O, right? So if you take the classic financial textbooks and you try to find out the difference or the way they explain these both futures, they are both derivatives products. They are called as derivatives. So there's one thing which is nicely described about them. Is that the futures, they are linear products. They are called as linear. That means their payoffs are linear. That means you either make a loss or you make a gain, and it's like a straight line. If one party makes a loss, other party makes a gain. It's pretty straightforward. But options, they are known as complex derivatives. The layoff is not linear. So we'll not go into details of futures and options right now, but what I'm trying to say is that wherever there are options, it becomes little complicated. So if you see the life of an animal is pretty much straightforward. There is nothing complex about it. So Srila Prabhupada, the commentators mentioned in this purport earlier that the lions and tigers, They are trained to be hunters. But there's nothing complicated about it. I mean, you don't see a lion or a tiger joining a terrorist boot camp to learn how to become a violent person, or to join a commando training program to know, how to fight. They are just the way they are. Horses are supposed to have sleek limbs and they run very well, but they are what they are. They are pretty straightforward. You see, and the commentators also very wonderfully point out that the pigeons are given the facilities of having unlimited sex life. And those of you who stay in Bombay, I'm sure, especially in the area of from Goregaon to Borivali or Dahisar even, that you just see pigeons everywhere. I mean, in childhood we used to see crow, pigeons and sparrows, but now you only see pigeons. And they're just so many, and I don't know how many of you have spent some 5-10 minutes observing a pigeon. You see, the only thing a pigeon is doing is trying to impress a female pigeon. Just see that, and they are just into it, and they're pretty straightforward about it. I mean, they don't feel shy. So, we have heard the story of Ramanujacharya, and how Ramanujacharya was passing on the street and he saw Dhanurdas. And Dhanurdas was so attached to this particular lady, and he was actually trying to serve her and trying to impress her in so many ways. So Dhanurdas, when Ramanujacharya saw that, he felt some compassion, right? He said, "Arey, what is this? What is he doing? He's having human form of life, correct?" But you don't see any saintly pigeon having that type of compassion. "Arey, what are these all pigeons doing? They are just trying to impress all the female pigeons. Let's take to Krishna." You don't see this happening because they're very straightforward. So animals, they have this superhuman qualities or whatever, but they are pretty straightforward in whatever they do. But to human beings, we have options. And whenever option comes, it becomes complicated. And those of you who have handled management or yatra and things like that, you would have this experience that when you give options to people, it becomes more complicated to manage, right? So if Lord really had to manage this material world in a very nice way, in a very efficient way, all he had to do is just not provide any options. Just make human life also very straightforward. Just come and live the way you are, right? But Lord, he takes this risk. He has provided options to living entities. He has given two facilities. Okay, either you can do this or you can do this, knowing very well that they will not take the other option, right? Why does Lord Krishna do it? And I was hearing one purport, was hearing one lecture of Srila Prabhupada once. And Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna never touches the free will of a living entity. And Prabhupada emphatically 2-3 times he said, Krishna will not touch that. Krishna will not even touch that. Like that, 2-3 times emphatically Prabhupada says that Krishna doesn't like to touch. So often people say that why God is interfering in my life, but by nature, by the way that he has created this material world, you can understand that he does not interfere the free will of a living entity. He does not even like to touch the free will of a living entity. That is his merciful nature. That's how he is so great. Correct? And coming back to this principle of giving two options to living entities. So the entire society has been created in the form of varnashram system. Correct? We know this. So there are 4 varnas. There is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And there are 4 ashramas: Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. So objectively looking at this particular arrangement, there are 16 combinations possible, right? The total 16 combinations possible. You can have a Brahman Brahmachari, a Brahman Grahastha, a Brahman Vanaprastha, like that. Then you can have a Kshatriya Brahmachari, a Kshatriya Grahastha, Kshatriya. So there are 16 combinations possible for human beings. So you at any point in your life, you could be any of these 16 combinations. Now think about it. Out of these all 16 combinations, which combinations you feel have really that facility, or as it is mentioned in the purport, the accomplishment, the facility of accomplishing sense gratification? Now before you come to a conclusion, I would like to tell you a personal story. So I remember once this was very early in 1996. I had just come into Krishna consciousness. I was working And one day I came to temple. My office was not very far. So I came here and I was absolutely tired. From my face, you could make out that this person is completely frustrated. So Gaur Gopal Prabhu, he was just sitting here outside and he saw me. And he said, Prabhu, you look very tired. You look very disgusted. What is it? And I said, yeah, Prabhu, I am actually very suffering. I need your association. And he said, okay, let's go. So, in 1996, you could have that facility of just asking Gaur Gopal Prabhu, please come with me, and he would come with you. Of course, now also he can, but I'm just saying. So he came down, and we were sitting there in the Lakshmi Narayan garden. And I was explaining to him that, how this office politics, and, there are so many women in my office, and I need to deal with that, and my mind gets pulled here and there, and so and so and so. I just went on telling many Dukher Katha type of things. And he understood, he listened to me very well. And I said, Prabhu, your life is so blissful. You are a brahmachari, you don't have to worry about how you're staying in temple, and you have the best type of food, and you have hot rotis coming in, and we have to look for a microwave oven, and then there are newses coming in newspaper that don't use microwave oven, and you have hot food being served. You're nicely able to perform your devotional service very nicely. You're so fortunate. So Gaur Gopal Prabhu very kindly put his hand on my shoulder. He said, do you feel, yeah, and I made a point. I said, Prabhu, only thing that you have to do is just control your sex. That's it. Just one thing you do, and you get so much a blissful life. So he said, wait a minute. Then he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, Prabhu, do you feel that controlling sex life is the only challenge of a brahmachari? So is that the only thing that a brahmachari needs to control? I said, yeah, that's what I think. That's what I have been heard. That's what I've been hearing. He said, no. He said, the real challenge of a brahmachari is to give up his independence. He says, you go home tired, right? You open a refrigerator, see if there is anything in that, and you can just pick up and eat it. When I come home, I am tired. I don't have a refrigerator to open and see what's there inside. So you can just pull out some cabinet, and in that there is some ladu and chivda made by your friend, made by your mother. You can just pull out the laddus and chivdas and eat it. You're hungry. One day you feel that, I'm so tired. Let me get up some 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. I can do it. Can a brahmachari do it? No, we have times given. We have to get up at that time. You can say that, this particular service I don't like to do, so I will do some other service. Book distribution is too heavy for me. I can't do it. I will do something else. Does a brahmachari have a choice? Radha Gopinath Prabhu was telling that story that he went into the Bombay Central train and met those two giant people who didn't even look at him when he was trying to sell him books. You have to undergo such type of experiences, so-called humiliating experiences. Being a good learned person, right, Prabhuji? And then you were saying that he was wiping the floor here once in the temple, and nice two couple, they were just married, they came here and they stood, and they looked at Radha Gopinath Prabhu cleaning the floor of the temple, and they said, Padha likha lagta hai. Meaning that he is such a well-educated person, why is he doing this type of work? So, becoming a devotee is not, basically you're relinquishing the whole facility of getting the prestige, the independence. He said, that is the main challenge. He said, the brahmachari cannot do this. But you have that independent. So you want to eat a particular food, you can say to your mother, okay, please make me Maggi noodles. And mother will make Maggi noodles for you. Can you do it in ashram? Can you say Maggi noodles, just go and make it? Because if you say that, then 10 others will have objection why Maggi noodles should not be eaten. Right? It's not that easy. So the main facility is independence. Now from this perspective, you look at all the 16 combinations and tell me, who are the combinations who actually have that independence? Probably a Kshatriya Grahastha and a Vaishya Grahastha. That's it. Nobody else. That means out of 16 brackets or categories that a human being can exist, only 2 have a facility of doing some sort of independence and gratification. Nobody else. Even a Brahman Grahastha, you may feel, he's a Grahastha, Brahman, respected, so a lot of independence. No. I was hearing once a lecture by Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada says, actually a Brahmana, he cooks his own food. He doesn't eat even from his wife's hand. Actually, he said, Prabhupada quoted Chanakya Pandit. He said Chanakya Pandit would cook his own food. So that's the standard of a Brahmana. And a Shudra Grahastha, he has to wait until the master eats. Right? He has full facility. He will be fed very nicely. But does he have independence? So only two categories have a level of independence. Right? So from that, objectively, we can make out that the entire material world is created in such a way that although there are facilities provided to you, but then there are limitations also. And that's what this purport very nicely talks about and very nicely points out. And when we look at this limitations thing, so let me read out the exact line which is mentioned in the purport. It says, where is that line? Condone fire, here it is. It is mentioned, although it is stated that the Lord facilitates sense gratification, right? It should be understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not ultimately condone the foolishness of the conditioned souls, right? So although there are only two sections or two categories in which you have been given sense gratification, but at the same time, there are limitations put, and the limitations guarantee, and Krishna also ensures that the living entity does not go into any foolishness. And whenever we think of this particular aspect, that Lord Krishna not accepting foolishness of any living entity, the obvious story that comes to the mind is the story of Gopinath Patnaik. It comes in the section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in that you can actually see that how a person can have these two facilities, the Atma Prasiddhaya facility and Matra Prasiddhaya facility. Right? The Atma Prasiddhaya is self-realization, cultivating the love of Krishna, and Matra Prasiddhaya is to cultivate sense gratification. Right? But even in there, if you cross limits, then Krishna will not accept your foolishness. It's very nicely brought out. In fact, the word Matra Prasiddhaya, the word Matra is referring to sense gratification, but the word, whenever you use the word Matra, there is a concept of regulation behind it. Right? कुछ मात्रा में औषधि लीजिए, इस मात्रा में ये करिए, उस मात्रा में. So Matra means there is some regulation behind it. So the very word Matra Prasiddhaya is regulated sense gratification, is not unregulated sense gratification. And that is brought out in this story of Gopinath Patnaik. And I know this story many times, many devotees have discussed a lot. But still for our purification, we can just have a look at it and try to understand this pastime. So the way it works. So Gopinath Patnaik, and another reason that we can discuss this pastime, and it's helpful to discuss this pastime, is because in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that all these people, so actually, the father of Gopinath Patnaik, his name was Bhavananda Roy. And then Bhavananda Roy had these sons, 5 sons. So I don't know the names of all of them, but Vaninath Roy, Gopinath Patnaik, Ramananda Roy, and all these. And what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said is that Bhavananda Roy was an incarnation of the king Pandu. And therefore, all these children were none other than Pandavas. Right? And just like Lord Krishna, he used Pandavas to give so many wonderful lessons. And as long as, jab tak suraj chand rahega, as they say, as long as the sun and moon will be there, the Pandavas will be discussed. Always. People may discuss them in a negative way or some may discuss them in a positive way, but Pandavas will always be discussed. Right? Similarly, Gopinath Patnaik also, as long as there are grahasthas in Hare Krishna movement, Gopinath Patnaik's story will be discussed. So just like Pandavas were used by Lord Krishna, to tell society how you should live, the case of Gopinath Patnaik also was used by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to tell all the devotees that how you should actually live. Just like Pandavas. And that's why we listen to this story. And it's so important, it's so wonderful. Of course, some of you must be wondering that how Bhavananda Roy's son's name can be Gopinath Patnaik. I mean, he should be Gopinath Roy, right? Ideally. But because Patnayaka actually is a post. So somewhere else it is mentioned, I don't remember whether it was in CC or I read it somewhere else, that Chaudhary and Patnayaka are two posts. So these typical people, although both have become now surnames, right? But they actually are posts. Like in Marathi also they have Patil. So Patil is a very common surname, but actually Patil is a post. So similarly, Chaudhary and Patnayaka, they are posts, and these people are actually given the duty by a king to collect taxes. So they are known as Tahsildars. So Gopinath Patnayaka was a Tahsildar. He had a job of actually collecting taxes. And he was a Tahsildar under the reign of King Prataprudra of Orissa. So it so happened that when he was actually depositing his whatever monthly or quarterly taxes back into the king's treasury, the counting was done. And the crown prince that time, his name was Purushottam Jana. The crown prince was in charge of counting the money, and he said he found that there are 200,000 kahanas. That's the currency that time. So 200,000 kahanas less tax being deposited. So he's like the Indian Revenue Services, IRS chief. So he immediately caught him. He said, hey, what is this? 200,000 kahanas less being deposited. Right. Now Gopinath Patnayake, he was an associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And obviously because of his smartness and whatever, he was very dear to the king also. So typically when you have such people who are good in what they do, and they also have that connection with the superiors, they tend to have what is known as an attitude. Right? The people have attitudes. So Gopinath Patnayake also, he knew that the king is favoring me. So when the prince immediately objected, he said, hey, where is this? He said, okay, I don't have it right now, but I will give it to you. He said, no, what do you mean give it to you? You have to give me right now. This 200,000, this is not your property. This is property of the king. This is property of all Janta. This is property of all the population. You have to deposit this 200,000 immediately. He said, I don't have 200,000 right now. I will give you. And he said, if at all you want some, he said, I cannot give you cash. I cannot give you cash, but if at all you want, I have some nice horses. And I'll give those horses to you, and then we will see. So Purushottam Jana was not so happy when he heard this and when he saw this attitude. He said, okay, bring all your horses. So they got all the horses. And this Purushottam Jana, he was... Now I learned this principle in one Bhakti Shastri lecture, which was given by... I have not done the course, by the way. But that one lecture I remember. This lecture was taken by Srimad Prabhu. And Srimad Prabhu told a very important thing. He said that whenever you go and you want to negotiate a price of something, you should never appreciate it. Never let the person who is the seller know that you have liked a particular object. Then he will never negotiate the cost. So you go to a shop and you like a washing machine, for example, and everything in the washing machine is fantastic. Then don't show it on your face that you have liked it. Because the moment you say the seller comes to know that you have liked the object, you lose the opportunity to negotiate. Right? In fact, you should find out 10 faults in that. Like if you go to buy a house, for example, somebody's house, and you're buying a second-owned property, then you find 10 faults in the house. And then say, see, nobody will buy this house, but anyway, I am willing to buy this, so please give it to me. Right? So it's natural. So this person, Purushottam Jana, he knew he's a politician. So he looked at all the horses and he said, no, these horses are not even fit for how much money you actually own. They are much less than 200,000 kahanas. So all these horses, they're stupid, they can't do anything. And when Gopinath Patnayake heard this, he actually became very angry. So he already had an attitude. And on top of that, he became very angry. And then he spoke something which he should not have spoken. So this part of the story you should actually hear from Radha Swami Maharaj. And I'm not the fit person to tell this. But what he did is that this Purushottam Jana, the prince, crown prince, he had something called as an idiosyncrasy. So idiosyncrasy means some physical habit or some nature which you do without even you realizing that you're doing it. Like, some people have the habit of doing his hand like this as they're talking. Right? If they're talking, they'll shake the hand like this. They don't even realize that they're doing it. Yeah. I'm telling the examples from our own congregation actually. I have seen devotees having. Or sometimes you may feel somebody who just makes his eye like this, very small, as he's talking. One very great spiritual teacher, he does that. He's not from ISKCON. So as he's talking, his eye becomes like very small. But that's called as the idiosyncrasy. So there's nothing wrong. People can have different idiosyncrasies. So this particular prince, he had the idiosyncrasy. What was his idiosyncrasy? That he would suddenly look, as he's talking, he would suddenly look up like this. So you're just talking simple things, but all of a sudden he would just look up and look here and there also. Like that. So you should see Radha Maharaj doing it. He does it perfectly well. So he had this idiosyncrasy. So when this Purushottam Jana was negotiating the cost of the horses, and he was probably finding out faults, that okay, he may not have a long tail, or he may have a short hoof, or whatever. It doesn't have a mane, nice mane, they don't look nice, they are old, whatever. Finding out faults. So this person said, Gopinath Patnaik said, at least they don't look up like you, like this, in the air, and move their neck here and there. And that was, he spoke that. But that was a very, actually, very important part. I remember this one, again quoting Gaur Gopal Prabhu. There's one very famous lecture. So Gaur Gopal Prabhu says that there are three things. Like, sometimes people are not able to become entrepreneurs. Like, what's an entrepreneur, right? He has his own business. So many people end up becoming employees and all that. And they have this somewhere pain inside. I never became a businessman in my life. Yeah? I could not open a factory. So Gaur Gopal Prabhu says in that lecture, he says that even if you have that pain somewhere in the heart that you could not open a factory, so there are three factories you should always open. And that everybody can open. He said, in the heart, you should have a love factory. He said, in the head, you should have ice factory. And in your mouth, you should have sugar factory. Just by, if you just follow this one, if you just establish these three factories in your life, it doesn't matter whether you're an employee or a businessman or a shopkeeper or whatever, you will reach amazing levels of success. You will earn huge amount of money. And you will become absolute, just develop these three factories. Develop a love factory in the heart, develop an ice factory in the head, and develop a sugar factory on the tongue. Just if you do that, your job is solved. But this Gopinath, if you have attitude, you will not be able to do it. I mean, not the attitude of gratitude, as they say, but the attitude in normal parlance. Then you will not be able to do it. But this person, so he spoke something which he was not supposed to speak. And he spoke to somebody whom he was not supposed to speak. Right? To one who is in honor, dishonor is worse than death. So Purushottam Jana became very angry. And now he's a politician. He's not a straightforward person. So he went to the king. And he went to the king, Prataprudra, and he said, he gave all false allegation against Gopinath Patnaik. He said, Gopinath Patnaik, he's a thief. 200,000 kahanas he's stealing. He's not giving them. And on top of that, he's making fun of the government officials. And on top of that, when I go to actually buy his horses or whatever, he's actually saying that these horses, I don't have anything to give, but you just have to take that. So he gave all false allegation. So the king said, okay, do whatever you like, but get the money back. And he just said like that. So do whatever you like, but get the money back. So he just picked up the first part. Do whatever you like. That's how people are. You tell them one sentence, they will just pick up one thing which suits their mind. So do whatever you like. Raja ne bola, do whatever you like. Now I can do whatever I like. So he announced a punishment of raising Gopinath Patnaik on what is known as a Changa. So probably Changa is a platform on which you are raised, and from there you are thrown onto swords, which are like this. And when you are thrown down, the sword just penetrates into all parts of your body and you die. Now that is too much of a heavy punishment, but he was insulted. So he gave that punishment. Now when that punishment was given, all the devotees, they immediately came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Orissa, he was in Jagannath Puri only. They came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu, please save your associate. He has been given the punishment of, raising on to the Changa. So Mahaprabhu said, okay, what is the problem? Tell me the whole story. So they said, okay, he was supposed to give 200,000 kahanas and he didn't pay that off and everything. So Mahaprabhu said, what can I do? As they say in Hindi, unhone haath khade kar diye. We have Mahaprabhu already with raised arms like this here. But those raised arms mean something else. For a surrendered soul who has taken shelter of Gaur Nitai, the raised arms, and especially if you have seen the raised arms of the Panchatattva Mahaprabhu in Mayapur, just by seeing those raised arms, you can become a devotee of Krishna. They're just so beautiful. You see their build, their stature, and the hugeness, and you feel that those arms are fit to take the entire world back to Godhead. If you just take shelter of them. But if you do some foolishness, then those same arms will get raised and he'll say, no, I can't do anything about it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he raised his hands, he said, oh, sorry, I can't do anything about it. He says, he has stolen the money of the king. He says, what can I do? This is king's property. So I can't do anything about it, sorry. The king has given that punishment, so what can I do? And then another devotee came, he said, no, what has happened is not only Gopinath Patnaik has been punished, but now his entire family has been put in prison. Because this debt is on the family and the family is not able to pay the debt. So they are all in the prison cell. So Mahaprabhu said, that what do you want me to do? So you want me to go to the king and say that, please release them and do like that? See, they are approaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Mahaprabhu is behaving as if he is a normal human being. Right? He says, you want me to go? I am a sannyasi. You want me to go to a king? I have not even met him so far. Because he is a king. Because he is a sense gratifier. I want to stay away from him. Now you want me to go and beg in front of him for somebody who is my associate? So this is not possible. He said, I can't do this. So, what we need to know, now I will not go into the detail of the story. Of course, later on, many wonderful things happened. Gopinath Patnaik was later on released. Not only he was released, his salary was doubled by the king, and so many things. Right? So, everything nice. And somehow, if you read the entire chapter of this Ante Leela, I think it's the 9th chapter. If you read this, toward the end, Kaviraj Goswami keeps on saying this again and again and again, that his salary was also doubled. So Kaviraj Goswami, he wants to convey this point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful that although he had first raised his arms, he said that he is not actually going to interfere. But still his mercy is so great that simply by his mercy, not only his problem was solved, Gopinath Patnaik's problem was solved, but even his salary was doubled. I think that 2-3 times it comes that his salary got doubled. And for any person who is an employee, it will be a very lucrative thing, a very big incentive to surrender to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That your salary will be doubled. So, but what is there for the devotees to learn? What is there for devotees to learn is that, yes, the facilities of sense gratification are given by Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in that, if you perform a foolishness, then Krishna will not protect. So one time, Radhanath Maharaj made this point. He said, if you are driving a car and you are having a concern that you may be met with an accident, and you are praying to Krishna for protecting you from that, right? He said, as long as you are following the speed limit given by the government, Krishna is protecting you. If the speed limit says 80, then up to 80 Krishna is protecting you. If the speed limit says 30, then up to 30 Krishna is protecting you. The speed limit says 60, up to 60 Krishna is protecting you. So Govind Prabhu also makes this point very often. He says, devotees fail to understand that there are two aspects of Lord Krishna. One aspect is Krishna himself. One aspect is Krishna himself, and the second aspect is Krishna's arrangement. And the Krishna's arrangement in this material world may come in the form of a natural existence, or it may come in the form of a government. But in whichever form it is coming, you have to follow. You cannot say that I will follow Krishna, but I will not follow Krishnas. And that's a big mistake. So the material world is arranged in that way. Recently, I was actually talking to one astrologer also. She's a lady astrologer. And she told something very nice. Just to emphasize this fact that how the material world is arranged for living entity to come back to Krishna. She said, every person in his kundli have two dashas which always come one after the other. Right? One is the Rahu dasha and one is the Guru dasha. And Guru dasha always comes after Rahu dasha. This is the way it is there for every person. Take any kundli, check it, you will always see that there is first Rahu dasha and then there is Guru dasha. Why is it like that? Because Rahu is a planet, I mean, it has its own scriptural connotation, which is different. But when Rahu comes in the kundli, the Rahu can take you to a great levels of frames and success. You see, all the people who suddenly become famous overnight, celebrities, they are actually in the Rahu dasha. So Rahu takes you up, and then suddenly, push, drops you there. You know, in my own life, I remember, and when that astrologer told it, actually I saw my own kundli and it was true. At one point I think in 2004 or something, my Rahu dasha started, and I changed my job during that period. And my salary went on increasing practically every 1 year, you know, without really, I mean, of course I surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. But it just not doubled. In a span of 7 years, my salary became almost 4 times what I was earning in my earlier job. And one day, I was thrown out of the company. The Rahu dasha ended. Just one day morning, my boss called me and he said, "You are fired. Sorry, you can't continue with this company anymore." And I had already taken a big loan and everything. And you know, you have that riding on the Rahu. And then one fine morning, it's just, dush, everything gone. Then what starts? Guru dasha. So in Guru dasha, what happens? Then people become introspective. Oh, maybe there is God. Maybe I have to surrender to Him. Right? So this is the way material nature has arranged it. So you can imagine the material nature is so accurate in the way she arranges everything that after Rahu dasha there is Guru dasha. That means it will take you to high levels of success, immediately drop you from there, and then immediately you become introspective. Oh, very nice. You know, I have to calm down. So this Matra Prasiddhaye is there, and then immediately there is Atma Prasiddhaye which follows that. And it very wonderfully happens in a person's life. And therefore it is mentioned towards the end that although there may be 2 options, but ultimately there is only one option. Krishna gives you 2 options, but then he ultimately gives only one option. And then I just want to compare one more example from the scriptures, where we actually can understand this conquest of a person, you know, the ambition of a person of Matra Prasiddhaye. And then how it culminates into Atma Prasiddhaye. And the famous example of that, which is given in Ramayana, is of Vishwamitra Muni. Now we will not go into details of story of Vishwamitra Muni, but if you see Ramayana, it speaks about these 2 personalities who are extremely ambitious. On one side you have Ravan, who is extremely ambitious. And on one side you have Vishwamitra Muni, who begins his life with as King Kaushik, and extremely ambitious. Ravana has an ambition because Ravana's mother, Kaikeshi, you know, she keeps telling Ravana that look at your brother, step brother, Kubera, how much he has, how much wealth he has, what do you have? You don't have anything. So what Ravana feels, oh, I will do tapasya. Vishwamitra Muni also comes in contact with Vasishtha Muni. He sees Vasishtha Muni has such wonderful facilities. He has his own cow. That cow can produce insurmountable amount of, armies or food or everything. I also want to have that. So what will I do? I will also do tapasya. Both take the path of tapasya. Both are ambitious people, right? Ravan takes the path of tapasya. He goes in a different direction. He takes the path of tapasya. In future, Ravan is infatuated by Sita Devi's beauty. He wants to go and capture Mother Sita. And Vishwamitra is also infatuated by beauty of Menaka. He loses his path of tapasya and goes into the life of Menaka. See, similar things happening in people's life. Pursuing ambition. Ravana wants to build a staircase that goes to the kingdom of Indra. Vishwamitra Muni, he wants to send Trishanku to the abode of Indra. Right? So much of ambitious battles going on. But one person landed up becoming the spiritual master of, or almost a guru of Lord Ramchandra. Another person landed up dying from the hands of Lord Ramchandra. Right? What was the difference? Both are following the path of ambitions. Lot of, it's there. But one person sticks to the path of scriptures. And other person goes away from the path of scriptures. So Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Yah shastram vidhi mutsujya vartate kamakarata. Nasa siddhi mamapnoti na sukham na param gatim. Shastra vidhi is very important. So when Vishwamitra Muni, he was trying to send Trishanku to the abode of Indra, right? And he was completely failing in that. And what Vishwamitra Muni did is that he actually created a separate Swarga, he created a separate heaven. So like, I'll actually create a separate heaven for you, Trishanku. And after he created that entire separate heaven, what happened is he could not himself maintain it. Because maintaining a heavenly planet, we understand maintaining Radha Gopinath Mandir itself is such a challenge, right? You can ask Krishna Prabhu. It's not easy. You have facility of so many people. Maintaining a house is so difficult. In Bhagavatam it is said that in Kali Yuga, if a grahastha is able to maintain house, he will be considered successful. So maintaining house is a problem. Can you imagine about maintaining an entire planet? So obviously, that maintenance of a planet was just consuming all the energies of Vishwamitra Muni. And at that time, he took shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the heights of his frustration, he took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Lord Vishnu appeared. And Lord Vishnu appeared, he said, don't worry, I will maintain this heaven for you. But Trishanku should remain in between only. He will not go to the heavenly planet, but I will do this job for you. Many years later, when Vishwamitra Muni was taking Lord Ramchandra with him, and he was telling wonderful stories to Lord Ramchandra, and it is mentioned that sometimes he would tell stories and Lord Ram would even sleep on his lap. So fortunate, because when Dashrath Maharaj asked Vishwamitra Muni, he sent his two sons with Vishwamitra Muni, he told Vishwamitra Muni, now you become their mother and father both. And Vishwamitra Muni followed that. He actually became the mother also very well. Right? And one day morning, when Lord Ramchandra was sleeping, and Vishwamitra Muni saw that face of Lord Ramchandra, he went into such an ecstasy. And he spoke that verse, Kausalya Shupraja Rama Purva Sandhya Pravartate. Uttishta Narashardurlya Kartavyam Daivamanikam. That verse is so famous, but it is actually mentioned, Shubhavilas Prabhu writes in his book, that when he saw that face of Lord Ram, he remembered that Vishnu who appeared in front of him to protect him from his body getting completely destroyed because of maintenance of the heaven. And he experienced that exact same satisfaction and ecstasy that he had experienced that time. So that's how Lord Krishna actually helps a devotee. One very senior devotee, he once told me, he says, often I am just so, frustrated in life because of office, because of problems in the house, because of problems in my society, and with innumerous desires in my mind of coming out of that problem, I come and I stand in front of Gopinath. And he said, when I see the face of Gopinath ji, I forget all the problems. That I don't remember what I actually came to ask for. Right? There was this old Hindi song also, right? That सूरज की जलती हुई किरणों से जलते हुए तन को मिल जाए पल भर की छाया, ऐसा ही सुख मैंने पाया जब शरण में मैं तेरे आया मेरे राम. Right? That song. So सूरज की जलती हुई किरणों से जलते हुए तन को मिल जाए पल भर की छाया. Have you experienced like this? Scorching heat outside, and you just go under a wonderful banyan tree which is having a nice sweet breeze of air coming in, and what kind of relief you feel. That is the relief that you feel when you see the wonderful face of Lord Krishna, or when you see the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. There was one Maharashtrian saint also, Tukaram, and he mentions in his one of the Abhanga, he says, Bhaga gela, shina gela, avagha zala anand. Ata kothe dhave mana tujhe charana dekhiliya. He says, Lord Vithala, your feet are so beautiful. Bhaga gela, shina gela. Bhag is your physical distress. Shina is mental distress. Just by seeing the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, one's physical distress and mental distress is simultaneously vanquished. Right? And that is the experience which Vishwamitra Muni saw when he saw the face of Lord Ramchandra. And when he spoke this word, Kaushalya Shuprajanama, it is mentioned that the word Kaushalya, he kept on talking for at least an hour. The remaining words didn't come out from his mouth. Like Kaushalya, Kaushalya, Kaushalya. He couldn't speak anything more because that amount of satisfaction that he was experiencing. Right? So in the midst of frustration, he took shelter of Lord Vishnu, and that gave him satisfaction. What did Ravana do? When the final moment came, whether Sita has to be returned or not returned, it is mentioned that all the 10 heads of Ravana had a combined meeting. Right? And 9 heads agreed that Sita should be given back. And 1 head said that no, she should not be given back. Right? So 9 heads agreed. This is there in living entity. Somewhere in the heart, that feeling is there that maybe I should surrender to Krishna. Maybe I should just give up. Right? But that false ego, right, that keeps preventing it. That no, you should not. And that 1 head said that no, you should not. And then he took the decision, okay, I will not. And then what happened? Finally, he had to be killed. Right? So what the scriptures are saying is that you could be following this process of Matra Prasiddhaye, right? But be connected to the devotion service of Krishna. Be connected to experiencing this wonderful, cooling, refreshing effect which you get after seeing the beauty of Lord Krishna, after hearing Krishna's pastime. Be connected to that. If you leave that connection, then Krishna will not condone the foolishness. Krishna will not forgive the foolishness. The foolishness of a living entity is to give up Krishna consciousness. Somehow we should remain connected. And that is the main thing. That is the main. So what I'm trying to say, I'll just end in 2 minutes. But this one last thing I want to say. Sometimes in your life, you may come across the people whom you are preaching, your relatives, or even well-established initiated devotees. And you may see them pursuing this path of Matra Prasiddhaye. Right? Many times it will happen. Somebody is proper 16-rounder, even a Brahman initiated, but he takes up a project. Just like here it is mentioned. Matra Prasiddhaye means what? The feeling of accomplishment. So there could be some project, maybe like establishing a new center somewhere and preaching there. There could be a project of maybe running a big institution, which is the service of the spiritual master. There could be another project of, managing some big thing. And you may see that a person slightly goes towards this Matra Prasiddhaye. That means, getting some material facilities, getting some, what you should do at that time. You cannot sit on the head of that person and keep saying, hey, Prabhupada didn't say like this, Prabhupada didn't say like that, Prabhupada didn't say like that. If you actually see the things which Vishwamitra Muni did in the pursuit of his becoming Brahmarshi, Prabhupada didn't approve any of those things. He killed the sons of Vashishta and, so many things. But what happened is that he maintained that connection to Vishnu. He maintained that. So the job of a preacher is to ensure that even if you see a person who is now advancing towards Matra Prasiddhaye, he may want to pursue some degree. So he is not so much very well connected to temple, he's studying something. Or somebody want to set up a business and he's not able to chant his 16 rounds in the morning regularly, he chants in the night. But somehow he's struggling, he's battling. But the job of a preacher is to see that somehow the connection of that person is maintained with Krishna. And the person keeps getting the experience of the cooling mercy, cooling, refreshing mercy of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. If somehow that is maintained, somehow that is then even from that point of Matra Prasiddhaye, the person will come down to Atma Prasiddhaye at some point in time in future. So that is very important. And one who is actually undergoing this, one who is realizing that I am going away from devotional service and I am following the pursuit of Matra Prasiddhaya, what should that person think? That person should remember this one thing, that Krishna will forgive me everything, but he will not forgive my foolishness. If I make some foolishness, then Krishna will raise his arms. Say, I can't do anything. You have to take the reaction of this. You have to suffer. So that is what I feel that we learn from this purport. The Matra Prasiddhaya and Atma Prasiddhaya. Once we remain our contact, so for those who are slightly going away from Krishna consciousness, you feel so, see to it that you maintain their contact with Krishna. And for your own life, always have this in mind that yes, Krishna will forgive everything, but he will not forgive my foolishness. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.